Hey guys, welcome back to another after show for The Americans. Tonight we're breaking down season 6, episode 3, Urban Transport. I mean, come on. What could be more interesting after this?
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
The Americans. Yeah, it happens sometimes. Oh, this song.
Oh yeah,
this song.
Dance with me to the end.
Yeah. Once again, another song that is so perfectly played at the so right time, right?
Leonard Cohen.
Yeah, exactly. All right, hey guys, welcome back. We're so glad to have you back. I'm your host, Alina Vision, and I'm joined always by my awesome co-host.
Hey everybody, it's Al G back here. We're in the house, aka Young Kremlin, aka Young Ruski. I can't forget like all my little shout outs and my monikers. So you can follow me on Twitter at Jamaica House Doc, and also on my new IG at alg_Jamaica House Film. What up, what up?
There you go. Oh, we are back at it again. So is Elizabeth, so is Philip, so is the whole crew on The Americans.
Back in the building.
I mean, all the time, nonstop espionage, and that's why we love this show.
It's always cracking. It's always bracking, as we say.
Exactly. Well, we got a jam-packed show for you tonight. Obviously, so much went down in the show, and we have some special segments that you're going to want to stick around for. Cold War flashback.
Hey.
We got some news for the show.
There you go.
Yeah, so it'll be fun. But exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Everybody's on the edge of your seat, right?
They should be, because it's a good one.
They should be.
It's
should be.
It's good. So right off the bat, thoughts, comments about this episode?
Okay, the episode opens with Elizabeth washing brains out of her hair and pulling like skull fragment out of her hair.
Could you imagine?
But she's so hard. She's so hardcore. It's like all this is kind of like matter of fact to her. Mm-hmm. And I was just gonna say, I know we're gonna get into it later, but like she was just so hardcore on Paige. I'm like, yo, you better be happy you had somebody who had your back and come to look at you when you hear a gunshot. But that's another thing.
All right. Oh, we're gonna get into that.
We're gonna get all
sure.
up in that. All up in that.
Definitely. You know, I liked this episode. I thought it was a good kind of transitional episode. Like you can feel things are starting to boil up and boil under, and we're getting little bits and pieces as to certain characters, kind of where they fit in, where their chess piece fits in. Mm-hmm. New ones are being brought in. I liked this episode. It wasn't very like mission driven, I feel, but it was more just like exploring the characters and kind of where they're going this
And that's
season.
the good thing about The Americans.
Yeah.
I think we both like it. It's not always like guns, actions, and espionage, and all that stuff is cool. They give you that, but again, that's what I like about a show that's really character driven. We're both talking about that, how it's really entertaining, and at the same time, you know, I think it's one of the few shows that are, to me, that belong right up in the golden age of television. You know, they say it started with The Sopranos after that, and then you had The Wire, and then you had shows like Breaking Bad. To me, this show is right up there with them.
I completely agree. This show deserves all the awards. Just to
all
give them
the accolades.
all the awards.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, well, let's get into it. Let's start off with Elizabeth.
Out of control, man. So she has so we open with her, you know, like washing the blood out her hair. And she goes and immediately, her daughter is over there, and she goes immediately like into scolding her.
Yeah.
Like, yo, why the F you leave your spot? You're not supposed to leave your location. You could have blown your cover. You could have blown our cover. And while she has a point with all that, I think that she's lucky she has somebody to have her back, because if that was her husband, if the gunshot went off, Philip would have broke cover and came to see her. And
Do you think he would have?
I think maybe she wouldn't for him, but I think Philip would have. I think Philip would have broke cover just to make sure he's.
That's an interesting point. So you think that Philip would have gone for her? Have we seen that before? I'm trying to think, because I mean they always worked so well together when they were partners, when he was, you know, in the KGB. And I'm trying to think.
I feel like he has gone out of his way to make sure that his wife is safe. I can't think of a particular instance.
has a little bit more finesse,
There
I'll
you go.
say, than Paige just running into the situation.
yeah.
I think he would have stayed back a little bit, seen what had happened, made sure that everything was okay. Rather, I mean, Paige just went straight to the situation.
Right. Philip would have done it with more finesse.
Exactly.
But maybe you guys can help us out in the chat if you can think of another particular scene or episode what Alina was
Right.
talking about that illustrates it. I feel like he goes above and beyond more than anything to
He
make
does.
sure his wife is okay. And obviously she's just more like hardcore by the line, never
by
lose
the
your cup.
book.
By the bizook.
She does not draw outside the lines.
Yeah.
She's by the book. I mean, it's, the fact that you brought up the whole Paige situation, I think it was really interesting to see the different dynamics between Paige and Philip. Because he was like, do you know about Est? We both kind of had a chuckle.
That was hilarious.
I mean, hey, whatever works for him.
Right,
and, it's
right.
now called a forum.
Right.
And he, tells her, like, you need to like explore these feelings and talk about them. And
Which I think,
right.
FY, I think Est or the form is like a new version of Dianetics. They're just not saying Dianetics. I just remember seeing all those books in the 80s, like self-help thing, like L. Ron Hubbard.
Right, there was
and all
there was a lot of self-help books, I think, in the 80s and
Yeah.
90s and all of that. But yeah, you could just see the different parenting because then Elizabeth comes in and she's just ragging on her. And Philip tells Elizabeth, well, you have your mother now to talk about it with. And then she comes in hot.
She blasts
It's like,
her.
I don't want to talk about it. Like, she wouldn't even let her stay at the house. Like, there's no maternal instinct when it comes to that.
Good point. Good
Yeah.
point. Sometimes it's like, understand to be a boss, you got to like learn to be rough and
Right.
you got to like condemn people, not condemn, but let them know when they're making an error. But sometimes people just need a pat on the back. And I think that's like the aspect we're talking about where Elizabeth lacks tact. Here's another thing too. I notice this is kind of like the boss. I don't know. What she reminds me is the boss who often like things that she's responsible for, not wanting to take so much credit. Like she's blaming Paige, but I'm like, yo, Elizabeth, you're the reason she's doing this right now, that she's even in the life. You should have never agreed to that. That's what I just keep coming
You're
back
the
to.
reason the gunshot went off.
Bam.
I mean, let's
Bam.
call a spade a spade.
Exactly.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah, she's definitely taken a hard line with her, and it was crazy just to see like no maternal instinct. But I mean, it's not out of character for her. I think that's
Not at
something.
all.
If she did show maternal instinct, I think I would have been like, I question that move. So writing wise, perfect.
Right on
because
point.
It was her because it just pointed to the fact that that's how hardcore she is.
That was totally her character.
Yeah, completely. Getting back to her and Philip, let's talk about her and Philip because we see a lot more of them kind of together this episode.
Their relationship is kind of thawing out, but they
Ish.
still have like this wall
There is a
between them,
wall
a
between.
glacier. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
And it's like while they've communicated more, they're talking around things like we were talking about. He's like,
Right.
well, things have changed back home, basically. And she's like, F change.
She doesn't want that.
She doesn't want
She
it.
doesn't want the change.
Yeah.
I mean, since you brought that up, he brings up how, things are changing back in the USSR and Gorbachev, like things are opening up and the young people and this literally
Glasnost, perestroika, everything he said was right, too.
Right, it
you know?
was. And she like struck out at him saying, well, how would you know? You haven't
was
been
funny.
back home.
Which is true.
It's
It
true.
was
I mean,
funny.
and I wrote that down. I was like, wow, there's these two spies in America with completely different views who come from the same country, who are married to each other and have worked together for so long. And neither one of them has talked to Russians in 20 years, to other, Russians that live in the Soviet Union for 20 years. Like, exactly.
They don't
how
have the
do
pulse
they know?
of the average person.
Right, because they're getting, Philip's getting American news.
And she's getting her news right from the KGB.
So it's
Even though it's gonna
kinda
be
tainted,
propaganda.
right? It's on either level. There's going to be some bias.
Yeah.
And you don't really know.
And speaking of those two schools of thought, it brings us down really to another like reoccurring theme, I think, as far as like, it's not just doing something about like protecting your country, but how do you protect your country and the manner in
Right.
which you do it. Elizabeth is down, to like throw the baby out with the bathwater, basically.
she is.
And Philip's like, well, I think his long-term vision is, if we don't have to be at war, that's a good thing. It's a good thing. That's what our job is, to try to decrease our chances of going to war. And she's such a hard liner, she can't see it.
Here's the thing I think with her is, and she even said it, they want us to be like them. Like the Americans want us to be like them, and she doesn't want to change
Dude,
like that.
Talk about a huge
Right?
cultural rift. I think
Yeah.
you really, I think you really put your finger on something, specifically because too many Americans, I think, and you see this around the world, just let's say if America goes into a war in the Middle East, I don't want to get too political, but basically the first thing that pops up that we bring with democracy is we bring capitalism, and we bring like McDonald's and like Starbucks and all that stuff.
Philip even said that.
Yeah.
Philip was like, oh, there's I think he said a McDonald's going up in Moscow.
But
right.
I think there's also, well, all that can be good. I think there's also something to be said to if somebody's from a different culture and them adhering to the traditional aspects of their culture, like, you know, you can give somebody democracy, but can you give them democracy at a gunpoint? I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and each culture is different.
Everybody's going to be different.
Yeah. You just never know. Some work out, some don't. Some it goes with the culture, some it doesn't go with the culture.
Exactly.
But yeah, it was really interesting to see Philip and Elizabeth, especially after Elizabeth comes home from cooking with Claudia and Paige. And you could just tell when she's in that element that she just loves it because it reminds her of being in Russia.
Right.
And it's the food, and, you know, her daughter is learning about her culture and kind of really, you know, getting into it and feeling it. And then she has to come home to this America.
Wah, wah. But here's the thing where I kind of side with Philip in the sense that it's okay to have two different perspectives, but because the world is changing, because perestroika, glasnost, and people like Russians over there, they can't even get like toilet paper, and they have all these like food lines. So obviously, like, it's not working. So I think she tends to romanticize a Russia that really doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, very true. Oh, good point. Good point. Because she hasn't been back.
Because she hasn't been back in 20 years.
She romanticizes it, but she also is very frank about it when she's telling Paige, you know, we used to eat this like every day, and how simple like the food is. And Paige is like, God, wouldn't you get bored of this? Like, how are you eating this?
Right.
You just get used to it. So I don't think she definitely fantasizes about it, but I don't think she over romanticizes.
Okay.
Yeah,
good
for
point.
sure.
Good nuance.
Yeah. And Philip, speaking of, you know, just capitalism, running the travel agency. It's so funny in this episode. I thought of this, I think, in the last episode too. I was like, his way towards marketing and managing, he's like a social media manager before there was social media. He's telling them, like, you got to provide value and you got to have images and you got to upsell.
He's like the consummate salesman. Like, he's really into it.
You are just way before your time.
Yeah.
You know?
And and I appreciate Philip's enthusiasm because it shows not only just how he's like, we're talking about he's living his best life. He's finding happiness. Yeah. Like, he really does want the travel agency to succeed. You know, I'll leave that point there for now.
Okay. He wants it to succeed, but when
it's just a cover.
Right. But he is having, we think, some financial problems with it.
This is what I was going to get into. Do you think, right when we found out he had financial problems and he was talking to Henry's dean and he was trying to like work out something, you know, for the payment plan for the tuition, he immediately goes into the spiel in front of the whole office. So that was kind of like Philip's, I think, passive aggressive way of like, yo, I'm gonna kick you guys in the butt when you start making some money around here.
Because I got some private school to pay for.
But I got bills to pay.
Exactly. Even though he's on scholarship, like, you know, wow. I mean, that was definitely a little seed we got planted that we didn't know before, and kind of adds to his stress, I think.
Here's the thing. Now he's truly American because he's worried about bills. Do you really want that now? Do you really want to be an American now?
Because they come hard and they come fast.
Yeah.
You know?
Life comes at you.
Real fast.
So does Sally Mae. I still got my Sally Mae bills.
He's gonna figure that out.
Yeah.
So Paige, this episode, she's definitely coming into her own. She's figuring out this whole situation. She's asking a lot of questions of Elizabeth, which she always does. And we see them taking a walk and her just really going over like what happened during the botched mission. And how did you think Elizabeth reacted? Because we saw a different Elizabeth than the night before. She was a lot more calmer, right? Yeah. And kind of explaining things to her.
I think, like, thank God, like, she took responsibility for the mission.
Right.
Because when you think about it, when she was trying to press this general, like, she hadn't seen him in years, and all of a sudden she's like, pops up in his life, and you got to think about like the human aspect. This guy's like built family, kids, and 40-year career, and like here you go, just just threatening to like pull the rug out from all that this guy knows.
Right.
So yeah, thank God she acknowledged that she probably did need to work him, but I think that's also too a kind of position you find yourself in as a spy, or at least like I don't know, I'm imagining as a KGB spy, they're like, yo, you ain't got this kind of time. You gotta turn this mofo over right now. You gotta flip him. We need this, this, and this.
There's a summit going on. You got 2 days.
Yeah, 2 days. Make it happen.
Otherwise, you gotta take that pill.
Basically. I know, right? And that keeps like, that's in the back of my head. Man, she's gonna have to take that pill. She's gonna have to take that pill.
And I'm so glad that they brought that up in the first episode, because that's going to be like, just in the back of our heads, the back of the viewers' heads, the entire thing. Because it's something that we know that the rest of the people that she's working with do not know.
Classic portrayal of suspense. As people say, like, suspense is not necessarily like we're talking about like a bomb blowing up in the room. Suspense is sometimes a ticking bomb under the table. You never know what's going to go off. And that's like a ticking clock right there.
Exactly. Exactly. There was one thing that she said to Paige, and I feel like it's part of her trying to get Paige ready for everything, because she said, you're not going to have to do this, hopefully, but you never know. You need to know how to deal with this. But she said she's not, or Elizabeth said she's not afraid to die. She says you have to, go at life fearlessly, especially if you're going to do this.
Right.
Like she's not, and you can just tell she's not afraid.
She's ready to die for her country. Like she's bought into it.
She's the person that the KGB wants.
She's like a true believer, like a true crusader.
Exactly.
But along those lines, here's the thing, while she is legitimately trying to prepare Paige, I think, and like tell her, here's all the pitfalls to watch out for. There's parts of it where I think she's totally soft pedaling it. Don't worry about that. You're never going to be in this position. You're going to have a job. You're going to have a desk job. That may not be her thing. She could be like Elizabeth by the time she hits like 29.
Right.
You know what I mean? And doing all kind of like, just ruthless stuff. And even when Paige was asking her about, how to use sex as a weapon and to manipulate people, she was like, well, it's never really done. It's not. I was like, you done it last night. You know what I mean? I understand, like, if like you want to keep your daughter pure, but there's something basically about like keeping it a little real. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think about that as a woman? How would you approach that as a mom?
Oh my goodness, that's a loaded question.
You're a KGB agent. Your daughter's asking you like, yo, should I use sex to like turn this guy?
Let's talk about the birds and the bees.
That's our clue.
That's even worse than having like the original birds and the bees talk. That's like, yo, mom, have you had to do this? I know. See how I'm beating around the bush with this? I don't know. I mean, here's my thing. If you want your daughter to go into this lifestyle, I think you need to prepare her for everything and tell her the truth about everything.
Basically.
I mean, she may look at you a little different.
Yeah.
I mean, she did say that, she did say, oh, well, some people, but she didn't say specifically her, even though.
She was like, I've heard of some people.
Oh, not me.
Some
I know.
Outliers.
I would never do that. A friend of a friend told me once upon a time. Yeah. But I think Paige is going to figure that out eventually. And I know that Philip, I think, has more of that realistic sense, because he's like, I've seen a lot. And he even said something during this. Oh, when he was talking to Elizabeth the first night, he said, well, she's pretty much seen it all now. And
she
Elizabeth was like,
not
all.
everything. Like, how much more she have left?
Right.
Which is basically a lot. She's like, I can get real with you, but you're not ready for that.
Exactly.
And Philip's definitely more like the parent who wants to like protect and not expose all that stuff.
He does. And we did see Paige go on a couple of missions with, one in particular with Elizabeth, and that was tracking down Glenn. Glenn is with the Russians, so I take it he's a pretty big person, obviously, in this
okay, so Glenn's the husband whose wife is bedridden.
Is terminally ill,
and he's involved in the negotiation summit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny when I see this after, I was like, okay, what's going on with this? There's Russian characters and there's English characters. Okay, so he's meeting with this whole crew. They're doing like the wine and dine and hang out thing. Yeah, and Paige is along, so she gets to see it.
She's doing the walkie-talkie.
The little signal.
Oh, wow.
By the way, I watched last week's episode, and I picked up your cue when you were talking about that black FBI agent. He did this little.
Yeah.
I peeped that. I was like,
okay. The black FBI agent, when they were doing the mission, I could have sworn I saw him walking around the same area.
Yeah, he's always in there. He's always in the background.
Oh, there's something cooking with him. I'm telling you, there's something cooking with him.
We gotta keep an eye on him.
I think so. I think there's gonna be probably maybe that's for predictions.
Okay.
We'll get something coming up with him.
Triple. What do you call it? Double cross.
Exactly. No, I don't think he's a double cross. I just think he was watching to make sure that nobody was running ops on them.
Okay.
Possibly. I don't know. But Elizabeth is there and she sits real close. I'm like, what if he sees your face?
Like, she could get busted, man. You got on this wig and like the new wave makeup. It's like, how good is that?
Yeah, I mean, she that's what, what I do love about her is that she just has some cojones.
She's not scared, never scared.
Not scared at all. She's got the cojones. That is for sure.
About it.
Yeah, and so, he starts talking about his wife, so clearly, people know
so
not
funny.
to.
Everybody, the conversation went wah, wah.
Wah. Very, very, yes, that's exactly what happened.
Inappropriate time, bro. We know, you're having a rough one.
Yeah. And the guy's like, let's just talk about baseball.
Yeah, let's change the subject.
Exactly. Let's just talk about baseball.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see how that's coming about. Now, the mission that we came into on the music tonight.
Okay.
Oh, my goodness. So since she killed the general, she now has a new target, which Claudia gives to her.
Okay.
And it's a guy who works at the warehouse.
Oh, yeah.
This is just awesome. I mean, this guy. He just gives up all the information.
What a poor sap, man.
But I think it's so brilliant how she's like, oh, we're performing a security audit, and he just lays it all out there for
and there's
her.
Elizabeth has a way about it. That's probably why she's such a good operative. She's like, she's an actress, but she's a good actress being a good actress.
Right.
She makes it sound believable and professional, and just don't talk about this with anybody. This is all between us.
And then he's like, oh, my girlfriend's in security. She probably knows about this.
Wow.
Oh, that you just
You
signed
almost feel
your
like you put a
death
target on this
warrant.
girl's neck. Yeah.
You just signed your death warrant.
Yeah.
And sure enough, Elizabeth takes him out. Now, do you think that was a smart move for Elizabeth to take him out?
I think it goes up there with the rather be safe than sorry. Like, maybe nothing could have handled it, but it's always like one of those like loose threads. It's like you rather clip it to be safe. But again, just shows how ruthless she is. Like, this guy, he's just like a useful idiot. He's like a nice guy, thinks he's just showing up for work and passing along this little evaluation, and you get taken out like that.
Yeah. There's a part of me that definitely agrees with you, but then there's another part that's like, I kind of feel like because she's on her own, she might be getting a little sloppy.
Maybe she's getting a little too happy.
A little too trigger happy. She's just killing everyone.
Yeah. Oh, she messed up again.
Exactly. She's just killing everyone.
Oops, gotta kill you.
And I'm like, that could catch up with you.
I think you're onto something in the sense that Elizabeth is definitely experiencing burnout. That's what we keep getting from like all these episodes.
Burnout, stress,
bags around her eyes, smoking, not sleeping, not thinking. Yeah, it's like, how long can she go?
Yeah, exactly. She did tell Twan this last season.
Yeah, that's true.
So.
Yeah, I don't think Twan would pay attention. It's so funny you brought up Twan. Just tell Twan.
I know. That's like in the back of my head.
Yeah. You did tell Twan that.
I know, exactly. So that'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. Obviously, we'll see in the next episode. But speaking of fun and, if you don't want to be sloppy like Elizabeth, you can grow in all areas of your life. And for those who do, we've got the podcast for you. That's right. Conversations with Maria Menounos, podcast edition, is hosted by our AfterBuzz TV founder and drops every Friday on iTunes. She's such a good podcast. I love this.
Maria's the bomb.
The best. So Conversations with Maria features celebrity and influencer interviews along with secret tips on how to be a better in all aspects of your life. From health to wellness to career, relationships, finance, and more, let our Maria be your big sister that you've always wanted.
Our Maria.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just go to iTunes and subscribe to Conversations with Maria Menounos for free. Be sure to rate, comment, and when you do, let Maria know that we sent you here. Conversations with Maria Menounos, podcast edition. Check it out. Trust me, you will not be disappointed.
Oh, you peeped out?
Oh, I love her podcast.
Ladies, fix your life with Maria, not Alina, with Maria.
With Maria, exactly. You know, you can be a guy too. I'll
check it out.
She has all kinds of people on there, and it is
built
amazing.
all this, so.
Exactly, she's amazing. All right, so now we're gonna get into the FBI.
Okay.
what's going down over at the FBI, because we got some Stan, we got some Dennis, and we got a little bit of Renee. We're gonna get to that.
We'll get to Renee. Don't get me started on Renee.
Because I could see that coming from a mile away.
And I've always suspected that she was. Well, we'll talk about that. But I always suspected like her affiliations from day one. And like Stan's vulnerable, divorcee, lonely. Anyway, we'll get into it.
Okay. So we'll talk about Stan and Dennis first, because they're kind of going back and forth on this whole
on this Oleg thing.
Well, yeah, Oleg, but also
on the couple.
Gennady, Gennady and Sophia. So they're, like we saw in the last episode, they're really kind of just tossing and turning over. Sophia telling this, what's his name? Bogdan? Who's her
new man, right?
That's her new man.
That's like her side dude.
That is her new man. And she's told him, obviously, about some of this stuff.
What is she thinking?
Exactly.
Here's what keeps coming back, and like we were both onto this. They just make, I don't want to say she's too innocent, but maybe a little bit too naive, somewhat ditzy perhaps. She just doesn't, I don't know, she doesn't like see the real world for what it is.
Do you think it's on purpose, or do you think that's just her?
I think it's just her, and I think kind of like her name escapes me. Who was the lady that Stan was dating and Oleg was dating? They later killed that spy.
Natalie? Was it Natalie? No.
I don't know. You guys help us out in the chat. But it reminds me of that. It reminds me of that situation when you take somebody who's kind of like young and naive, and she just wants to, like have a family. But like the minute you cross over, there's no going back. Like, that's your main priority. Like, you can get taken out, you can get your boyfriend, your kids taken out, and she's still kind of going along like very frivolously, like it's a game.
Is it Nina, guys?
Nina!
Yes.
Thank you.
I knew it started with an N. I knew.
You saved us.
That's right. Jeff in the booth.
Right out, Jeff.
Coming in the clutch.
Bam.
Thank you.
Even he knows Nina.
Yes, Nina.
So anyway, I feel like Sophia's like that. And I also, I feel like, that's why I feel like she's not long for this world. Another thing, we're talking about loose threads. Obviously, Stan and Dennis were going back and forth, and Dennis was more optimistic, like, well, maybe this guy won't tell. But Stan's more like, nah, man, we got to clip this.
Yeah.
And we didn't see it coming, but I liked how they pulled the, oh yeah, you applied for asylum, just roll up at their job. That was like the best way to like get him out of there, get him into protection.
That's what the FBI do. They'll come in with no warning.
Yeah, roll up on you.
No warning.
Yeah.
And it was interesting just to see like the look of surprise on their faces. They're just like, wait, what's going on?
I applied for
political assault. What?
Yeah.
I mean, now it's like, forget Bogart, or what's his name?
Yeah.
Bogdan
is bye-bye.
Yeah, he is bye-bye. I don't know what to think about Sophia. I kind of think she knows what she's doing. She seems so fluty, like, oh, I just met this guy and all this, but I think that there's an underlying reason for it.
Okay, I got to give it up to you, because that's some guys, man. It's like, we're so thick-headed, but women, they know how each other think.
Like,
y'all know how that big thing. She's not that innocent. She knows exactly what she's doing. Is that what it is?
I think so.
Okay.
I really do. I think so, because it's easier to play that, like, oh, I just met a man and da-da-da-da-da. And like, I'm over, Gennady, I just want, Bogdan. And that's an easy thing to do, but because it came kind of out of the blue, or at least to us it did as the viewer, I don't know if I believe it.
Cheers on a seasoned woman finding that out, calling that. See, I'm the gullible guy. I'm like, oh, you say, oh, really? Okay, I believe everything you're saying. Everything you're telling me on the surface? Okay, sure, no problem.
See, then you're like the Dennis, right? Because Dennis is like, oh, well, maybe. And Stan's like, no, I don't trust. And she said, what did she say? We're Russians, we know how to, or we're Soviets, we know how to keep secrets. And Stan's like, girl, please.
Yeah.
Girl, I have dealt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That girl's got secrets within secrets within secrets.
Yeah, and Stan this is not his first rodeo.
After having his heart broke a couple of times. This
is not his first rodeo. I think, honestly, in the big picture, I mean, we'll see, but I think he did the right thing.
I agree.
Whatever, and
I agree.
It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out and exactly what happens and
as
all of
well
that.
as protecting the operation and his assets. I think he did the compassionate thing, because the next thing is like, really they put it was a target on their back. There was
Yeah.
a target on Rinaldi's back. You know, more she talks, she's endangering herself. So I think Stan did I guess like I said, the more compassionate thing, the more
Right.
humane thing,
Right.
rather than just leaving it out there to dangle.
Yeah. I mean, especially if he's been doing a lot of hard work that's really dangerous, then
Right.
it's the right thing to do,
Yeah.
obviously.
And speaking of who wants some of that hard work at the Stan Beeman home.
You want to get into that.
Well, I'm sorry. Whenever you're ready. Whenever you're ready.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I just had it on
because-
the tip of my tongue.
Yeah, no. Okay, so Renee, she
Renee's a mess.
she brings up she wants to quit her job and become an FBI agent.
I started rolling. Not like I want to go and like work at Sears. I want to go become like a travel agent. She's like,
No.
I want to become an FBI agent just like you.
Stan's like really diplomatic about it. He's like, yeah, you'd be great, but the cutoff age
Kinda
is
old, baby.
37.
I thought that was kind of a nice dig.
Because I was thinking, I don't think they take people like after a certain age.
Right,
like
right.
yeah. And she's like, well, they can make an exception. So let's talk about where you think this is coming from.
I've always feared, without confirmation, and probably you do too, that Renee was an operative.
Yeah.
You know, that she's playing him. And I think even Philip and Elizabeth had
Yeah.
the same ideas when she just popped up on the scene. Like I said,
Philip did.
and
Yeah.
you know, because he was newly divorced, and she just pops up all of a sudden. She's in love with him. She wants to be
And she's
move
like
in with
totally
him.
is tight.
Totally is everything.
Yeah.
And just the fact, and I remember even Philip, I think asking, or one of the two asking, back home, they're like, yo, did you guys send an operative out on Stan Beeman? They're like, well, we can't, they didn't really know anything, or they didn't
Right.
confirm it, but
Yeah.
the jig is up. We know who you are. We know who you are, Renee. You're not real.
So you're calling that she's
Calling it, she's unfaithful.
if she's not, I think it's a great kind of like tease and plant.
Oh my goodness.
For us, because it definitely has been planted a few seasons, or a
Right.
couple seasons back at least. I think she is as well, and this is one of the reasons why. In the first episode, which we weren't able to get to when we did the first episode, she was talking to Dennis's wife, I believe it is now, because
Okay.
they have a kid together, so I'm assuming it's his wife.
Okay.
And Elizabeth was washing dishes after their dinner party, and she started talking about stuff that they were doing in the FBI. And she gave a little glance to see if Elizabeth
Was listening. Yeah.
So I'm like,
She's got game. And of course, like Elizabeth is over there, like ear hustling, you know, with,
she's
like,
she is the master at ear hustling. I mean, we saw it in this episode too. She was ear hustling with some pizza in her mouth.
yeah. Got the little like glass to the wall.
That is what she does. She is a professional. That's what she gets paid the big bucks for.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a feeling that she is trying to figure out and get her way into.
Yeah, I mean, poor Stan, man. It's because he's such a
Yeah,
nice
he's a nice
guy.
guy.
Like that's like the last thing. But guess what, man? This whole thing has tragedy written all over it. It's all about to come tumbling down. It's the last
All of
season.
the people that are around him. Yeah,
Everything's
exactly.
circling the drain.
He doesn't know it, but he's just surrounded by Soviet
Man,
KGB.
Poor guy, man.
He doesn't know it.
Poor guy. Here's again like what I love about the show is like nuance instead of
Mm-hmm.
being two-dimensional, but three-dimensional. The thing is, Philip, he actually loves Stan. Because
Yeah,
Stan was
as a
like
friend,
a good surrogate father for their son, good friend, and
Mm-hmm.
I think he would legitimately try to like protect Stan, you know, if push come to shove. But I guess more would be
I
revealed.
kind of think you're right. Yeah, and it's kind of crazy that we haven't really seen them together so far, except for the dinner party. Because normally in previous seasons we saw everyone kind of hanging out, and the kid. Maybe it's because the kids are not so much in each other's lives
Right.
anymore. But yeah. So let's talk about Stan and Oleg.
Oh man, the stag Oleg.
So Oleg is back. Dennis has been on Stan to go and
Like,
see
yo,
him.
can we get a popping right now? Come
You
on, man,
need
make it
to-
happen,
yeah,
Captain.
You need to go and see him. So he finally goes over to the Potomac Inn and sees Oleg. And he actually, he apologizes for everything that happened.
Off the top.
Like off the top. Probably a good thing. Otherwise, he wouldn't get in that room.
Yeah. I was surprised Oleg let him in. He didn't have to let him in.
Yeah. And it was just that I liked the interaction between the two of them because it was definitely a very interesting back and forth and repartee, and the lies but the like, I know you're lying.
Yeah.
You know. So tell me, what did you think about that scene?
Well, first of all, shout out to Oleg. That actor, Costa Ronan. We were both talking about him. He's on.
He's on Homeland.
He's on Homeland.
Exactly.
And he's playing like another Russian spy.
No, don't give it away.
Oh, sorry. Spoiler alert. But I just like that actor.
But he's bomb in both shows for sure. I mean, he's killing it.
Okay, so you were asking about Oleg and
Oleg
Stan.
and Stan. Yeah, about that scene.
Okay, I truly remember Stan doing all that was like humanly possible to try to like keep him from getting burned. But it's like this entire world of espionage. It's like if you know one little thing, they will use it and they will leverage it. And like we remember when Oleg was going through all this back and forth with his job, and like they're like doing internal investigations on him. It's like that whole thing really with Nina came back to like bite him.
Yeah.
And I believe Stan that he really tried to protect him, but it just didn't happen. That's the world they live in.
He really did.
Yeah.
He tried to protect him, but I mean, how is Oleg supposed to know? And he's not going to trust him?
Of course,
you know?
who would? Yeah,
exactly. But pretty much Stan tells him, you know, whatever you need, whatever you're doing here, because I know you're doing something. You're not here for the
urban transport planning.
Yeah, you're not here for that. So you need to just like lay off
Knock
whatever
it
it
off.
is. Little does he know that he's actually on the side
They're on the same philosophically, right?
Exactly. Philosophically, he wants things to open up in Russia and become more, you know, progressive and all of that. So,
and case in point,
Yeah.
just the fact that in this world of espionage, like double, triple cross, double agents, triple agents, you could literally be talking to somebody who really you're on the same side with, but
Right,
you
but
wouldn't
you
even know.
don't know.
And you can't even reveal your cards because
No.
how much it would endanger. But think about it. That's what the whole summit is about.
Right.
Is like trying to establish peace. But it seems like it's doomed from the start.
right. Well, that's why there's diplomacy.
Yeah,
and
we hope.
And you hope it works.
Yeah.
You just hope it works. And then the last scene, we see Philip in disguise, and he's going to see Oleg, which confirms that he is doing the job. And we saw it throughout the episode when he was asking Elizabeth, you know, what exactly is going on. And she does open up to him.
But only slightly.
Slightly,
though.
and she stops herself and she says, I can't talk about it.
Yeah.
But we see him trying.
He tries, but it's like, come on, Philip. At a certain point, you just got to say what you need to say instead of like beating around the
So
bush.
you
like,
want him to say.
I want, because here's the thing. At the end of the day, I want the best for what's best for them as a couple. And I know that's not a priority for as much for her as it seems to be for him. Anyway, that's my impression on the two
Right.
characters. Like, she loves him, but, you know, this is who she is. She's like,
Right.
ride or die for her country. And, yeah, so I want him to just say, look, I was approached. There are these two factions that, you know, that are warring, you know, in Russia, and two factions in the KGB.
Okay, but now that he's heard her opinion,
Kind of already
don't
know
you
where
think?
she stands.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well,
Yeah.
I can't change her mind, so might as well just try to make peace
you're-
on my own.
You're,
You know?
you're probably right, but I'm just more concerned about the relationship because ultimately I feel like it's going to come down to like, I don't know, man. What was that movie, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, with Brad Pitt and Angelina
Yeah.
Jolie, where they're both like lying in bed with pistols underneath their pillows,
It's
and like who knows
crazy.
who's gonna shoot
Yeah.
who next?
I mean, I guess when you go into that world, you don't trust anyone, even the person that you're married to.
How can
you know?
man?
Exactly.
But I'm rooting for them. We're rooting for
We
them.
are, because we love them as characters. All right, let's get into our special segment.
Hey.
We've got the Cold War flashback.
Cold War flashbacks, y'all.
Yes.
And Jeff, I don't know if you saw the
music.
assets. I sent them over to the engineer, and we're talking about our newest spy of the week, Klaus Fuchs.
Yes.
And
this one kind of gets under my skin.
okay, you tell me why. I'll set it up and you tee it off. Here we
Okay.
go. Yeah. I emailed it, but there's plenty of pictures of him right there.
Okay.
Okay, so Klaus Fuchs, he's a German guy
Mm-hmm.
who actually went to go work for the UK. Because he's really super smart scientist, you know, to work on development of nuclear energy and the
Right.
atomic bomb. And I guess he became so valued that when during World War II, obviously the UK and the US were allies.
Right.
You know, we would swap information. So he actually went to go work for the US too and like kind of share what they were developing. And ironically, I love this music. By the way.
I know. It's like doing the most.
But ironically, this is the time when like the Russians were our ally too. We actually used to
Right.
be allies at this
Yeah.
time. So, but obviously we know how the Cold War war turned out, and after World War II, basically, Russians became our enemy, which basically tried to divide the globe. But anyway, this guy, he had some very substantial fukes, some nuclear secrets, eventually, and they knew that he had like Soviet sympathies. I guess he was a communist, or philosophically. So the Ruskies were actually able to flip him.
Yeah.
And side note, when he got caught, they actually linked him to the same cell as the Rosenbergs from last week. Okay, full circle.
Yeah,
So, but I want to hear your hot take on it.
No, so this gets a little under my skin because I am actually, so he was one of the scientists on the Manhattan Project in Los Alamos, New Mexico. I'm from Los Alamos, New Mexico.
So it's home, okay.
And the reason why I'm from there is because my grandfather was a physicist that worked on the Manhattan Project.
Wow.
Yeah. So for me, it's like, since I've been raised in that subculture, like you do not tell secrets. You do not spill state secrets. Like this.
You're just like them Russians,
I'm like, no.
Alina.
I mean, I'm sure that, he probably had a philosophy of, one country shouldn't have all this nuclear power, but in doing so, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, and it, started in arms race with people having that type of technology, and I think people were already going to get there. It was just a matter of time.
True,
but yeah,
true.
that's it's a home thing.
It's a home thing,
It's a home
right
thing,
on.
yeah.
Shout out to Alina and her home,
Los
New
Alamos,
Mexico.
whoop, whoop.
All right, bam, bam.
Yeah. All right. So we got some news too about the show.
Oh yeah, time for our latest news about the show. Hey, okay. I don't know if you ever heard of the Bodega Boys, Jesus and Miro.
We love them.
Okay, then you are like aficionados. But Bodega Boys are Jesus and Miro. They have a show on Viceland TV. It's actually like beating out like all the late night talk shows. They're like, they took over like Jimmy Kimmel last week. But the bottom line is they do this weekly show where they bring on guests, and our own Matthew Rhys from The Americans, who plays Philip, he was their guest last week. Yeah, so we learned a lot about. Okay, let me ask you, did you know this? I had heard that that Matthew and Keri Russell had like dated before, but did you know they've been still dating all this time and they have a 1-year-old kid?
Yes, they do.
I didn't know that. I didn't know they did the long-term thing. I thought they was just kind of like a superficial like Hollywood thing.
Didn't they like get together on this show, right?
Are you serious?
Yes.
Okay.
From what I know.
Okay, that's a good take.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, here's another funny story that he talked about on Jesus and Miro. He said that he and Keri had actually met years ago, before they even working together. But nothing. He was like drunk, and he asked her for a number after a kickball party, something crazy like that. Yeah, something crazy like that. And it never worked out until they got on The Americans, and it's just like
he's really funny and witty in interviews.
I
really
love
like
that guy.
I like watching
he's
him
got
in
that like
interviews.
and obviously
So is she too.
Both of them are dope.
They're the great
Keri
couple.
Russell, I loved her on Felicity.
Yeah.
I liked her more than I liked the show. I liked her as an actor.
Both of them are amazing actors and actresses. I mean, the fact that he gets rid of that accent.
That Wales accent. It's really thick. That's
amazing.
the thing I didn't know. You would never know from if you watch him on as his character on The Americans.
Yeah, there's a lot of actors who are good
yeah,
at it.
it seems like
Apparently an American accent is real easy.
Right, apparently. One more thing about him is another hot take on Matthew Rhys. He likes hip hop. Okay, we were talking about Jesus and Miro from the Bronx, the birth of hip hop, and he was talking about, I'm doing a show in the 80s. I used to listen to 80s hip hop, and I used to break dance, and I used to pop like. I was like, this Matthew Rhys talking, and he's talking in his British accent, and it's like, I used to do like this, but I hurt my shoulder, I think he's a gas. He's a gas.
I'm gonna go home right now and watch it.
There you go.
Let's get into predictions.
Predictions.
I'm sure we got predictions.
We got mad predictions.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV
predictions. Okay, you go first.
Al first. Okay. We keep coming back to Philip and Elizabeth's relationship with Stan. It's really, to me, fundamentally like a flashpoint in the show.
Right.
That's kind of like the relationship that binds everything together. So I think I kind of alluded to this where I felt like Philip would actually stick up for Stan rather than see, him ever get hurt. I'm gonna take it a step further though. But because of his relationship with Stan, and they basically live across the street from each other, here's my prediction.
Okay. Ooh.
Stan is going to be following Oleg because we know he visited him and he doesn't believe him, and he's going to follow him and he's going to see him meet with Philip. And so I think maybe Stan, that's when he's going to discover, like, oh my God, this guy Philip the whole time is an agent. Why is he talking to Oleg? You know, I'm throwing that out there.
That's a good.
That's a good one. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
I was trying to work out in my head because I think you're onto something. I think you're right, and I've been thinking that eventually Stan's gonna find out.
It's like the
but
two
he's
worlds.
not gonna But he's not gonna want to do. I feel like he feels Philip is such a good friend that
Same
he's
thing.
just like, and if he finds out what Oleg is working on, then maybe. You know, they can come to a comment.
Again, what you were talking about,
Yeah.
if they actually were able to, like, you know, show their cards, you know, they might actually see that all of them are on the same side. But that happens so rarely.
I think it's going to happen later in the season.
Okay.
But yes, I agree for you. I completely agree. I think now that's how. Because I was always like, maybe Henry will find out and then come back and like tell Beeman because he was always, you know, looked up to him. I don't know. I just never understood how that would happen, but I think it's gonna happen.
It's gotta happen. I mean, it's like this is the last season. It's like the worlds are getting closer and closer together. Yeah, so we're just waiting for things to really get interesting.
Yeah, and they are, because every week it's something
always something,
new.
man. It's always something
with the Americans. That's right. Yeah, so that wraps up this show. Where can the good people find you?
The good people can find me on Twitter at Jamaica House Doc and also on algae_Jamaica House on my IG. Algae_Jamaica House. Bam!
All right. You guys can find me on all social media at Alina Vision.
The Vision.
That's right. To continue this conversation, go ahead and leave some comments in the YouTube box below. Description
Get at
box.
us.
Give us your predictions.
Yeah.
Let us know.
We'll respond.
Exactly,
We'll be up in the YouTube comments too.
We will. And yeah, till next time, we'll see ya.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion.
Nope.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later, Gator.
The views expressed herein are those of the host only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.